Hey everybody, President Trump has officially signed a new travel ban that is set to take effect on June 9th, 2025. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the important information that you need to know about this travel ban. So, in President Trump's first term, he enacted a travel ban. When President Trump was reelected, many of us thought that a travel ban would immediately be enacted, and we were surprised to find out that it was not enacted immediately. On President Trump's first day in office, he signed a series of executive orders impacting the U.S. immigration system. Among those executive orders was an order that, among other things, called for various government entities to put together a list of countries that had deficient screening and vetting measures that made it difficult for the United States to properly vet the citizens of those countries for purposes of granting them immigration benefits. And the various government agencies put together a list, and now we have the workings of a new travel ban. And again, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about what the travel ban looks like, who it affects, and who is exempt from this travel ban. And of course, with any sort of travel ban, there are going to be people that are seeking immigration benefits that are harmed by the travel ban. But fortunately, there are a number of exemptions that are quite positive. So we're going to cover that in today's video. And with that, the first thing that I'd like to announce, the way this travel ban works is that it is preventing the issuance of visas to people from certain countries. It is not calling for the revocation of visas for people that already have visas. This is very important because when we originally read that executive order that called for this list of countries, that same executive order left the door open for the revocation, the canceling of visas of people that have already been issued visas. And we were very concerned that this travel ban could potentially call for canceling visas that were previously issued. The good news is that this travel ban does not call for the revocation of previously issued visas. Rather, it prevents the issuance of new visas for people that come from certain countries. And with that, you should know that there are two classifications of countries. There's one group of countries. It consists of 12 countries that I will list in just a moment. Citizens of those countries are subject to a full suspension. What I mean by a full suspension is that citizens of these countries will be prevented from being issued immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas. Then there is a separate category of countries, there's a separate grouping of countries that consists of 7 countries, and those countries are going to be subject to a partial suspension. What I mean by partial suspension is that this group of countries is going to be prevented from being issued immigrant visas and certain non-immigrant visas. And the non-immigrant visas that are being targeted are B1 visas, B2 visas, B1/B2 visas, M visas, F visas, and J visas. So again, we have category 1 consisting of 12 countries, and these 12 countries are subject to a full suspension on immigration, meaning that these countries are going to be prevented from the issuance of immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas. And then there's category B of countries that are subject to a partial suspension, meaning that they are suspended from the issuance of immigrant visas and certain non-immigrant visas. Those non-immigrant visas, again, are B1 visas, B2 visas, B1/B2 visas, F visas, M visas, and J visas. Now, another important point, and I'm going to list the countries that belong into each group in just a moment, but another thing that I want you to know, for countries that are subject to the partial suspension, this proclamation also instructs consular officers to limit the visa validity periods to the extent permissible by law for the other non-immigrant visas that citizens of these countries could potentially be eligible for. So again, the partial suspension countries are prevented from receiving those visas that we mentioned. But let's say there's a non-immigrant visa class outside of the scope of this travel ban. The proclamation, the travel ban, still instructs consular officers to reduce the validity period of these other classes of non-immigrant visas to the extent permissible by law. Now, which countries belong to which groups? Again, full suspension countries, there's 12 countries. And those countries are Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Those 12 countries are subject to a full suspension, as we discussed. The countries that are subject to the partial suspension are Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. And now, a point that I also want to mention, why are these countries being specifically targeted? Something very interesting is that the presidential proclamation will individually list each country, and under each country, the proclamation provides some sort of reasoning behind the suspension. And without going through the reasoning behind each country, there are certain trends that we've observed, and there are certain predominant reasons why these countries are included on this immigration travel ban. And not all of these reasons apply to each country, but a combination of these various reasons may apply to the various countries. For one, as we discussed earlier in the video, some of these countries are included on the list based on what the US perceives to be deficient screening and vetting, meaning that these countries may not have the proper infrastructure or ability to properly keep tabs on their own citizens, such that the United States cannot properly vet citizens of these countries for purposes of issuing them immigration benefits. Another common theme that we see in the reasoning for including various countries on this list of countries that are subject to either total or partial suspension are the rate of visa overstays of citizens of these countries. So for example, in various countries listed on this travel ban, it will list the country and then it will list a percentage of recipients of visas for those countries that overstay their visa. So it might say something like this country, country A, rate of B1, B2 visa overstay, 26.2%. So in various countries, it will list the rate of people that have received certain visas overstaying those visas. And it seems that that has been another factor that was taken into account when structuring this list of countries that are facing either total or partial suspension. Another reason that's mentioned throughout the proclamation is it is mentioned that certain countries refuse to accept their citizens back when they are ordered removed from the United States. And that seems to be another basis why this proclamation includes certain countries on the list of suspended countries. So that's just an important thing for you to be aware of as the reasoning that's been specified for various countries being included on this list. So now that we've provided a high-level overview of the countries that are implicated by this travel ban, I want to move to some specifics and some good news, if you will, in terms of certain exemptions from the travel ban. So the first thing that I want to mention is that what this travel ban does is it prevents the issuance of new visas for certain people that are citizens of these affected countries. So what does that mean? If you already have a valid visa as of June 9th, 2025, you can still seek entry to the United States using that visa. Similarly, if you are already lawfully present in the United States in some sort of a valid status, even if you're from a country that is targeted by this presidential proclamation, the presidential proclamation does not call for your removal from the United States. So if you are lawfully present in the United States, or if you already have a valid visa and you're not even in the United States, but you have a valid visa, you can still use that visa to seek admission to the US. So those are some aspects of good news for people that are hearing about this travel ban and may be concerned. Now, separate from the fact that there's good news for people that already have visas or that are already lawfully present in the US, there is a list of people that are exempt from this presidential proclamation, from this travel ban. And what I want to do now is I want to highlight some of the categories of people that are exempt from this executive order. So for one, some very good news to many is that green card holders, lawful permanent residents, are exempt from the travel ban. That was a big question on many people's minds. Would green card holders be impacted by any sort of travel ban? Well, we now have the answer to that. If you're a green card holder, if you're a lawful permanent resident, this travel ban does not ban you from the United States. Another bright spot is that dual nationals that hold a passport of a country that is not implicated by this travel ban can appear to still be able to apply for visas to the United States, even with this travel ban. So again, dual nationals, let's say that there's an individual that holds citizenship to both Iran, which is a country that is subject to this travel ban, and also holds the citizenship to Canada, a country that is not subject to this travel ban. Based on the exemptions listed in this presidential proclamation, it appears that that individual can still apply for visas using their Canadian passport. So again, in some cases, dual nationals are exempt from this travel ban. Another very major category of people that are exempt from the travel ban are certain immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, either the spouse of a U.S. citizen, the child of a U.S. citizen, or the parent of a U.S. citizen. You similarly can qualify for an exemption from this travel ban. And those are some of the notable exemptions. There's also exemptions for immigrant visas for religious or ethnic minorities facing persecution in Iran. There's other exemptions for certain diplomatic or official visas like an A1 visa, an A2 visa. There's also exemptions for certain athletes. There's a list of exemptions. I wanted to cover and highlight some of the most notable ones. And I also wanted to cover that even if there isn't an exemption per se that somebody falls into, there are also waivers and case-by-case exceptions. For example, the Attorney General and the Secretary of State may grant case-by-case exceptions to the travel ban. So there's potentially some hope there for those that don't fit into any particular exemption. Another important point that I want to mention, as we were discussing the exemptions, I mentioned that immediate relatives are a part of the exemptions. But something that you should know is that the presidential proclamation, this travel ban, does call for the need for clear evidence of qualifying relationship with a U.S. citizen. So it seems that there's going to be significant evidence to be provided to demonstrate that you have that relationship with a U.S. citizen to be eligible for that exemption, to be able to demonstrate that you fall within that exemption. So that's another important point that I wanted to mention. Now, there you have it in today's video. I know we covered a lot of ground. We talked about what this travel ban is all about, which countries are implicated, some of the notable exemptions, and so on. So if you find yourself in a position where you're fearful of the implications that this travel ban could have to you or one of your family members, one thing to note is that you should consult with an experienced immigration lawyer. Immigration law these days is fast moving, it's very fluid, and there's changes that are routinely being announced, as you can see by this travel ban. And so it would be very wise as you're navigating your immigration plans, if you're planning on traveling, before you travel, you should make sure to discuss your situation with an experienced immigration attorney. With that, I want to thank you for tuning into this video. As always, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button to be in the loop with all the videos that we're posting. If you know anybody that can benefit from this information, make sure to share this video with them. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next video.